We're getting into that really techie part of the season. It feels like that final run. We're into that second half, and playing a team like Ipswich seems a lot more complex than it did at the start of the season, when Liverpool beat them 2-0 away from home, a goal from Mo Salah, a goal from Diogo Jota. And even though Ipswich threatened, and even though people were talking them up, Liverpool were beginning to show the genesis, and we're beginning to feel the genesis of fans of what Arne Slot football has become to be known at this point in our Liverpool lives. We've not even known him for all that long. Honestly, compared to the previous Klopp era, it really doesn't feel all that long. But we now do have a better idea of what he's made of. We do have a better idea of what the team is made of. We had a better idea of his relationships between those guys. For a very long time, actually, we didn't know what his rotation would be like. But I think in more recent games, we've actually seen a lot more of Arne Slot using that rotation effectively, plumbing the depths of his squad and actually finding out where the depth is, which I think, has broadly been proven to be all around. It's not necessarily that every player is like for like a change. I think what he is doing is tactically assessing the players and saying, well, yeah, I think we can actually do something with this. Or Harvey Elliott's back now, or Chiesa's coming into things. These are two really interesting attacking players, along with Darwin Núñez, who turned up in the last couple of weeks, who are turning up, who are showing good signs that there is good rotation and that squad depth in the Premier League is incredibly important. He is really showing that. But I struggled to find a time when looking through the last few games, even beyond the last few games, where Arne Slot hadn't rotated, where Arne Slot hadn't done those 5 subs, massively put a shift out there on the pitch that changed the game in Liverpool's advantage. Even the game against Brentford, where I was watching it unfold right in front of me next to Liverpool away end. When Darwin Núñez scored those goals, you could see that it was almost that force-feeding nature of what it was they were trying to do with him. Feed the Darwin and he will score is almost the way that it felt. He, down the middle, centrally, really, that's a real strength for him if you just give him a one thing to do. It really worked. That's not going to work against every team. That's not going to work against every low block that we come up against. Something that we've come up against more and more and more, and was actually a bit of a... It was some of the architects who were trying to build the system to go up against Liverpool were doing this low block counter-attack thing. Ipswich will have been watching that. Ipswich, damn it, we're doing it when we started the season. So to think that they wouldn't do it now is crazy. And it's not like they're just a relegation team. They've had some good results more recently. Not against Arsenal, not against City, but against Chelsea. They certainly had a good result. I can't remember their other win, actually. They actually had a draw. What was the other draw? Fulham was the other draw, and then Bristol Rovers in the Cup. But what I'm really saying is, this isn't just as if this is just a team that are going to roll over. They've got good counter-attacking chops. They're certainly a side who are technically proficient and kind of pose a threat to our midfield, if that makes sense. And I also think that, in more recent games, we've seen Liverpool rotating a couple of players in and out. Curtis Jones isn't going to be in there. I think we'll probably see Dominic Szoboszlai start instead of him in this game because Jones got injured in that last game. But we'll also see, I think, our conventional midfield of Alexis McAllister and Ryan Gravenberch side by side. I don't think this is a game to bring Wataru Endo in, though, with an eye on the PSV game and where we go in the Champions League this season. I think that's probably the time to bring some of these people in. We'll then see a back line, fairly conventional one, actually. I think we're probably going to see Tsimikas all the way across to Trent, the normal 2 centre-backs in the middle, with Konate and Verge. Slowly, again, I think Konate, even in the last game, looking better, but against Brentford, he wasn't looking stiff, but I just seemed kind of growing back into games. I was there for that AC Milan game earlier this season where he just absolutely ate up every ball over the top, and I want to see him back to that. And Slot was kind of alluding to that in his press conference earlier this week. It's defensively, he's A1, but if he can carry the ball out, if he can look a little more fluid, we've got someone who's like a generational talent, right? At the front, which I think is where most people are focusing on right now, because that's been a real point of contention, or one of a few points of contention for Liverpool in recent weeks. I think it goes Salah, I think it goes Darwin, because we've got too many injuries out there at the moment. I think we go Diaz, because I think against PSV, we'll probably start someone like Cody Gakpo, give him that homecoming. And I think we'll see a bit of rotation against PSV. We need 1 point to top that Champions League group, though. PSV are looking pretty good. I'll do this all in my preview of them later in the week. They're top of the Eredivisie. And they need these points against Liverpool. They need a result, I think, against Liverpool to guarantee that they go through in a favourable position into the next round. And that's kind of what I wanted to talk about here is, how do we attack the second half of the season? I want to know what you guys think about this. How do we approach bringing in some of those more peripheral players? Someone in the last video thought when I was saying peripheral players, I meant lower quality. I certainly don't mean that. I mean, Liverpool have got a great level of depth in their team. You could see that against Brentford. You bring on Harvey Elliott, Chiesa, Nunez, you bring in Tsimikas for Robert. There's so many different changes we can make. You don't need like for like in order to have quality in those positions. What we do need is to be able to bring in certain qualities of player that can change the way that we attack the opposition goal. Chiesa is certainly doing that, getting a lot of those shots away. Darwin Nunez proved that in his last game, etc., etc., etc. And Harvey Elliott's certainly doing that too, though he's not the same 10 as a Curtis or a Sobo. He's certainly a fascinating player, an interesting guy to have in the team. Lovely to hear his commitment, amazing to hear what he wants to be and who he is. And I'm interested in seeing more about Harvey Elliott. I'm interested in seeing more of him getting integrated into the side in coming weeks after what a lot of people were saying looked like it was towards the end of his Liverpool career. Having said that, you might also be putting pressure on the manager, putting pressure on the team to keep him and, basically saying all the right things as a player. We never know, I suppose, in the modern game, but I don't want to be too cynical of those players that are performing well at the moment. I don't think this is the time of the season to be overly cynical. Videos like this, sure, mention it. But when you get to the game, we've got to back the guys now. I think Darwin is that guy that you really need to be doing that with at the moment. The brilliant game that he had against Brentford, the brilliant cameo that we needed Darwin to have, was essential to this second half of the season and starting this. I can't stress enough that the Champions League came back and, as fans, we're kind of still getting used to this new schedule. I like the new table system, but it certainly elongates the Champions League format, makes it a little more ever-present throughout the season, but it also gives us a bit more to contend with, a bit more to worry about throughout the season. And even though some people are talking down the teams we're immediately going to face in the round of 16, I really don't think that's a smart decision, if that makes sense. I think it's a bad decision, actually. And if I look at the Champions League table, the quarterfinals, I think we're looking at some of the kind of lower, the sides that qualified lower in like the Bayerns, Real Madrids, there's even the PSG, there could even be a Man City in there at some point. Obviously, this is the nature of the Champions League, but what I mean by that is we need to be able to keep our legs throughout this season. Whilst we're talking about winning the Premier League and the Optim machine is talking about 92% or whatever you want to talk about, that's not what I'm here to talk about. That's a headline which gets great clicks and those kind of things, but it doesn't tell me a lot about where the rest of the season is going to go. Liverpool's rotation and the ideas of switching up on oppositions, which Arne Slot has been doing a lot more recently, using those 5 subs, using the depths of the team, using differences in movement of the ball, but still keeping the control that we need, has been so key to the way that we have undermined opposition's confidence. It's not necessarily always been just about tactics. There's been this confidence undermining and this pressure. After Liverpool score 1, very often in a lot of these games, it feels like they can score 5. That happened against Brentford. I felt there were times against Lille, even though it wasn't really a classic game, where we looked that way. I think the same goes for games like Ipswich. Ipswich are going to be looking to do what a lot of other teams have done more recently against our defence, score and then sit back. And we've allowed them that benefit because we've not been tight enough at the back more recently. Spurs have gotten that, lots of other big teams have gotten that, and they've given them something to defend, which changes what they do. Not necessarily what we do. I think we know there's a full 90 minutes there. There's no need to panic early on, and we've certainly changed that since some of the Klopp days when it felt a little bit frenetic at times, a little bit like there was a lot of pressure circling even in like the 10th minute. But I still think that we have a great case for saying that this Liverpool side have not allowed standard to slip or whatever you want to call it, but they've allowed oppositions into games. And we don't want to be doing that, especially against teams like Ipswich. It gives them something to defend. It gives us a harder time. It means we have to use more of the depth within the team at a higher intensity than we possibly would if we were defending that or trying to control where we were at in the game. And I think the frustration for me has come when that obviously we want to control every game. Obviously we want to win every game. And we want to see the team progressing in the best way. This is version 1.0. We barely know Arne Slot as a manager. We barely knew him when he played Ipswich earlier in the season, but we still barely know what it is that he's capable of as a manager. And a lot of final fans told us this. He builds over a couple of seasons. They told us the first halves will not be as good as the second halves in a lot of games because he takes some time to assess, gives his players a bit of time to grow into the game, gives them some time to feel out the opposition, but it also gives them some time to feel out what we're doing too. And it's been those changes, it's been these critical shifts that we've seen be so effective. But with those critical shifts, especially against low blocks, there are times where those things don't come off, or there are times where it feels a little bit more frustrating, or it won't come off, and we need to hold our nerve. It is not about winning every game between now and the end of the season. It is about putting together a solid and consistent run of very good games in something like February, when we go away to City, Villa, Everton. and making sure that those other sides around us can't catch up on points, which means winning against teams like Ipswich, frankly, and then trying our best to hold teams like City, Arsenal, and Villa either to a win or a draw. And I think, we can forget, you want your team to just go on and just be doing the same thing. Seasons are run as marathons, they're not run as sprints, even though in recent years it's become that kind of sprint for City. And I think Arne Slot is very aware of that. I think the players are very aware of that feeling. They're aware of the different feelings surrounding this team at the moment. But what they need right now is that little boost. They need this push into that second win that is there. And at the moment, it might feel like we're moving into that. But the Lille game was not a classic. The Brentford game, we did stutter until we brought on those guys in the last couple of minutes. And we've got PSV later this week. We need to finish as strong as we can, be dominant in that final group stage so that we can show, hey, we deserve to finish on 24 points here, top of the group, out of touch of someone like Barcelona, out of touch of Arsenal, Inter, teams we will probably face in the quarter and semi-finals of this competition, if we were to get there. There is a lot of season still to come, is basically what I'm saying. And that's why Ipswich as a game feels very critical, because they've got the ability to undermine our confidence. And I think even though, we've become better against teams like Norwich, there is still, Nottingham Forest, there is still a bit of, we need to score here. Until we get that goal, there's a bit of nervousness or a bit of stiffness about the team sometimes. And sometimes until we get that goal, it seems to be there's more belief about the opposition. Once we score, very often I've seen the confidence of the opposition wane. This is at Anfield this weekend. Get behind Darwin Núñez. Get behind the players who are feeling more peripheral at the moment. When Elliott comes on, show him that love. Try and play Trent up. All these kind of things. Especially if Darwin's on the field, we need Trent to be at his best. Do you know what I mean? He needs to be able to pick out these guys fairly quickly, get us moving, give Darwin space to run into. It's not solely on him, but it's important. That midfield battle is going to be key in this game. They're going to pack it, they're going to low block, and they're going to get down the other end, down to the lap types, and try to hit us on the counter-attack and try to isolate Van Dijk and Konate. I look forward to seeing what you guys think. I think I've already kind of been through that. I think in the midfield, we know where we're going with that. It's the second half that the second half of the season we really need to lean into now and lean into all the players we've still got. I care less about the transfer window. Obviously, I have to talk about it on this channel because there's a lot of rumours and stuff, and I obviously have my own opinions about which players are going to stay and go. Those are almost irrelevant. If you're going to stay or go in the long run, you still want to win a Premier League this season. Your goals don't change whether you want to win it or not. You want to win titles during the time you're a player. That doesn't change. So let me know what you guys think in the comments below. What's the Ipswich score going to be? Are Ipswich going to score? Are Liverpool going to score? And yeah, what I was really impressed with was the fact that are Ipswich going to score? Well, if it was in the Champions League, seemingly not. We had the longest run since Rafa Benitez and set a new club record for how long it has been since we conceded in Europe. Rafa Benitez, notoriously a very defensive manager, in a very defensive period, granted, but a very defensive manager. And I think it's an impressive record for us to set again. Between that and AC Milan, wow. Try and carry some of that off. I think it shows the difference between continental football and English football, the way we play English teams, the way we play continental teams. But I think we've got to get back to where we were with that defensive solidity. But especially as we've got teams like City and Villa and Everton in the coming weeks, we need to get behind the team now, give them that momentum going into these games, and really just boost them onto the next level. I think it's really important. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Let me know what you think the big headlines of these games are, and I'll chat to you guys again in a little while, probably post-game. Much love.